Hello and welcome to today's session where we'll be discussing blended ROAS and why we believe it should be the North Star KPI for any e-commerce business, really any business out there, but it's anywhere e-commerce. It's always with an e-commerce spin on it. I wanted to warn everybody, my kids are most likely going to walk through that door because they're just about to leave for school, and they will do that no matter whether or not I've put a post-it note on the door. But without further ado, I just want to click the right button, and there we go. So I just wanted to get started off with, just for anyone who is not familiar with Site Revenue or me. So I'm the founder of Site Revenue. I've been doing Google Ads for about 12 years. We have 40 plus active advertisers in the US and Europe, spending roughly 38 million a year. All we do is e-commerce, and I like to say that we've specialized in shopping ads. Of course, we do search and display as well, but I would say our strongest suit is by far shopping ads if you look us compared to other agencies. So the issue I want to talk about today is that we're getting less and less data, and it's less and less reliable. For instance, paid social used to get too much credit, in my opinion. Now it gets too little. Google Ads used to overestimate, or didn't used to, they still overestimate their own value by claiming branded terms. Google Analytics, in my opinion, is the last click lottery and is utterly useless to actually do any form of marketing strategy with. It's getting better. And that's really where I want to get to here towards the end here, that the no attribution platform is really useful. Like, there's okay data in there, but it's not like it's something where we can say, hey, this platform is telling me this month I need to spend 8.2% on Facebook, 12.5% on Google. I will need to remember to invest for the future in content and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't exist. It's where a talented CMO needs to put down his magic or her magic, and that's where they need to start working using blended ROAS. This is where I get this from a lot of people, but it's all relative, right? If you had a bad ROAS last year, then it's comparable to this year's bad ROAS. Or if you couldn't, if ROAS wasn't reliable or the channel data wasn't reliable last year, then it's not reliable this year, right? No. Tracking is getting less reliable, and that's just how it is. Like we saw it like with when it came into iOS 14 for Google Ads, it's just been gradually getting worse. And ITP, cookie consent, etc., are things you can't get around them anymore. So you have to admit tracking is getting less reliable. And this is where the biggest issue then happens, is that when you start working on this and you start decreasing marketing spend based on channel data, getting worse and worse and worse, then that's really where I say you welcome the death spiral of online marketing. But just to clear up a term, when I talk about channel data, I'm like Google Ads is, when you look at Google Ads, see what's the ROAS in there. If you look inside Facebook, and what's the ROAS in there, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I'll talk about this a lot today. I'll talk about channel data versus blended ROAS, and that's really what I mean. It really welcomes this death spiral. And when I talk about a death spiral, it means that if your ROAS last year was 500% in a channel and this year is 400%, the system or yourself will start bidding lower, and that will give you less data to work with. You will get less revenue. And if this is because you're just tracking less, then you're just going to keep tracking less and less and less and less until you either reach such a low point that, hey, now you found a new low point, and you're going to stay there until you get less data. Or, and this is where my biggest concern is with this, is that all of our algorithms, all the smart bidding, everything is based on us having smart bidding and having algorithms that actually use all this data that we have. So the less data we give the engines, and we still tell it, hey, you still need to hit these high targets, then it's going to keep decreasing and decreasing, decreasing until it hits this. And this is really what I believe is a death spiral. I've seen it for a lot of advertisers where we get asked, hey, what's wrong? Why are we not doing this? And we come in and we set up a framework. We set up a campaign, an account that we know this will work. And then we'd say, increase spend. And they're like, we need spend. And it works. It just magically works because you spend more on a proper setup with a good product on a good website. It will work. So this is where I believe, like, your ROAS, and this is something we need to agree on before we move further, your ROAS has never been real. The ROAS that you see in the interface last year, today, 5 years ago. It's never been real. It's been what you've been able to track, but it's never been the actual ROAS. And anybody who tells you otherwise, I just think they're too black and white. Like, all this is a gray zone. It has never been real. It used to be a better proxy for success or proper attribution and stuff like that than it is today. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Like I've said, it used to be a better proxy than it is today. So, and the reason why blended ROAS is such a good solution is because the challenges that you have get bigger and bigger and bigger as you scale. So if we start off with a product that has a high AOV, this is a typical product where blended ROAS works really, really well, because there's a long time from the click to the purchase. And the longer time there is from click to purchase, the higher is the likelihood that you're not going to be able to track that journey. No matter, like, you're not going to get the right attribution back to this click or on all the clicks and around, whether it's cookie consent, or it is ITP, or it is changing devices, or it's simply just that the cookie expires. Then it changes. So high AOV is a problem. If you then start scaling, meaning you start saying, hey, we need to ramp up spend, or we need to test new channels, we need to do this, and that's new, you can't really depend on getting an exact ROAS that's high enough for your break-even point. When you start doing that, then depending on channel data in Google Ads or Facebook or any other channel, becomes bigger and bigger. If you then start doing some branding on top of that, that's really where you can really measure the success. And if you don't have anything in the back end going, hey, we spent 100 grand last month, but hey, we still hit 300 grand in revenue, we're still good. If you don't do that, if you don't have that mechanism, then the bigger you get and the more you scale, the bigger the challenges are actually going to get. So the solutions that we'll talk about today is that, yes, we can give the systems more data, and we should, but blended ROAS should be your core KPI. We'll talk about what blended ROAS is, how to work with it, what metrics I believe should be used for different levels in an organization, and in the end, we'll talk about how to implement blended ROAS. But one of the things that I think we should discuss just before we talk about blended ROAS, I want to make sure that we all, like I said before, all the marketing channels we use today are depending on data. So before we use blended ROAS, I just want to, just as a basic, I just want to make sure that we do this. So make sure you implement server-side tracking, use enhanced conversions or the equivalent on any other channel. Make sure you make up for lost cookies. Pause the video, read this. I'm not going to go into too many details here. I've had it in other presentations lately. So make sure you give the system as much data as you can. This is not an option to not use this, actually. So what is blended ROAS? And this is my ugly ass slide, but sometimes you just have to go with it. So blended ROAS for many is also called marketing efficiency ratio, or revenue to marketing efficiency, MER. On Amazon, it's called TACOs, like total advertising cost of sale. Others are called holistic ROAS, overall ROAS, etc. And today we'll just talk about blended ROAS, but it's all the same thing. So basically, it's revenue versus marketing spend. How much of your revenue did you spend on marketing as a percentage? And the one thing I want to say about blended ROAS before we get into this, it's an efficiency metric. It can never stand alone. Not like hitting your blended ROAS target, but only hitting 80 or 60% of your revenue target is not a good thing to hit. So ROAS is an efficiency metric, no matter if it's called blended ROAS or channel ROAS, etc. It's an efficiency metric. It can never stand alone. So this is the kind of interface that you could work with and look at. So you'll have total marketing spend around $1 million. You have total sales around 4.3 million. And that really gives you a blended ROAS, like if you have it over here, a blended ROAS of 448. Again, also got marketing efficiency ratio, etc. This can be done on many levels. It can also be, okay, what's your blended customer acquisition cost, or what's your blended profit on ad spend in total? Like, all these things can also be used when you talk about blended ROAS. This particular interface is from Polar Analytics, which is one of the more simpler versions. But if you really only use Google Ads and Facebook and a couple of other core channels, then this can be a really good place to pull in all the data. So how to work with blended ROAS. So let's take this example, for instance. So we are using a target here of 700%. This is without doing blended ROAS. So this is how you're probably thinking about this today. So you have a target of 700% ROAS. For 9x ROAS Google Ads, you want to increase the spend because you have some room to go. Then for Facebook, you want to decrease the spend because you want to get that 6x up to 7x. We should probably stop all spend on TikTok because it doesn't work. We're too far away from our target. I have a thing with that. I think you should just decrease, but in this case, we'll just stop spend. We should increase spend. We should increase focus on organic search because it has such a high return. Same on email. But what if I told you that we're a brand in growth mode right now? We have really good numbers. We have additional budget available, and our blended ROAS is healthy with the current marketing mix. What if I told you that? And what if I then gave you some channel-specific insights? So for Google Ads, we're hitting 90% impression share. Facebook is hitting 40% of all email signups is coming from there. TikTok is producing 5 times the amount of new customers as Google Ads is. And 5 years ago, and here we have my pretty face. Can I move my pretty face? I can if I go over here. We invested heavily in a large content universe over the last 5 years. And then if we then go into saying, okay, based on these insights that we have here, what should we then do? I will push for that we shouldn't increase Google Ads further because there is a law of diminishing return. We're not getting more, like lowering our ROAS from 9 to 7 if we have a 90% impression share. It's probably not going to do that much for us. It's really, really high. If we then look at Facebook ads, we should probably just read a lot of the revenue that's pushed into email, or maybe just combine those two, or look at, okay, what is from a new subscriber coming from Facebook, how much revenue is coming from those subscribers. That should probably be attributed over to the Facebook ads. And again, that might be something you do already, but if you're not, again, this is a blended ROAS mentality. TikTok. So seeing that it has 5x the amount of new customers per conversion-ish, then it reaches a brand new audience. We should test and scale it. We should probably not try to measure it up to the same standards as Google Ads or organic search or Facebook, which are channels we've been running for a while. So at this point in time, we should just test, we should scale, we should get that ROAS up, most likely. But seeing that it's reaching a new audience, we really want to just keep pushing that in there because we're a brand, we're in growth mode, and we have healthy margin. We're hitting a healthy blended ROAS as it stands right now. Then on organic search, don't want to change anything, just continue to reap the rewards. And on email, we just run it. But did you notice the difference? I'll just go through both of them here, where we say, okay, here we're limited by channel data, so we're going into two decrease in stops to increase in test and scale. That's really the difference that we're looking at here, that we're very limited. We can't move on if we're not hitting a minimum ROAS that we somehow have decided once upon a time in 2014 that we need to hit. That if the individual channels can't hit that, then we're not moving further. And this is really this is where the magic of a very good CMO comes in. And this is where every single CMO should use a blended ROAS mindset to plan their marketing strategy. Every single one that I talk to that are talented, that are hitting their targets, that are growing their brand, and still continues to do that today when we're talking about a post-COVID e-commerce normalization growth rate. They're still hitting targets. They're still growing. And they're the ones who are using a blended ROAS mindset in order to plan out their marketing strategies. So this is really where blended ROAS becomes a competitive edge. And I hate that word because it's such a way to just talk about how much, it's a cliche is what I'm trying to say. But let's try to take the numbers from before again. Our target was a 30% blended ROAS. Google Ads is hitting 400% ROAS. But this has nothing to do with the example before. Brand new. Blended ROAS are hitting 25%. Total revenue is 100K. You invest in Google Ads. Google Ads is decreased to 300%. Again, from 400% to 300%. Google Ads revenue as tracked in the channel inside Google Ads, you don't really see revenue increasing. Should be a bad investment, right? But if we look at it with a blended ROAS mindset, hitting 300% ROAS, blended ROAS is not 30%, total revenue 140K. Go back, 100K, 300%, 400%, 25%, 100K. Put it on the slide better. Now we're hitting 40% more revenue at the blended ROAS that we have as a target. Is that bad? That's not bad. That's a really, really good investment. And this again is a thought example. Normally it's not this clear, but it's not far off what we see normally. And this is where we really look at it, because your competitors would have rolled this back. Looking there and say, oh crap, we're not hitting the 400% that we hit before. We're not seeing a revenue increase, and we should probably roll this back. Because you put in the blended ROAS, because you look at total revenue, then it allows you to keep going. It allows you to keep pushing spend, no matter what the channel actually says. It might be something that you can't actually track. Your competitors would have rolled them back, or you would have. And that's really like, this can both be a competitive advantage, but it can also be like your detriment that you don't do this, because if your competitors are doing this, that can be where you go, why can they invest this much and we can't? Like, we have better products at the same prices, or blah, 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 blah. Everybody says this. Better products, better website, everything we do is better. Our competitors, but somehow they can still be in business. Well, sometimes it's things like this. But I still want to say, this isn't just like a blank check to ignore KPIs or ignore channel data. Let's say the same example here. So you lowered ROAS to 300%, but at the same time, you increase email sends. Like, you change your email flow, or you just send out a big promotion through email. What channel produced a revenue increase? In this example, if we can see that there are actual proof that emails were the ones that were responsible for increasing revenue, meaning if we can see last click in analytics is directly correlated with the increase in email sends or the promotion that got sent out, then it's most likely not Google Ads. So like, the channel specific data is still useful if it's telling you something. In this example, we could potentially see that, hey, this is revenue that's directly attributed back to email. And so the lower ROAS in Google Ads didn't actually produce the extra revenue that wasn't tracked. It really didn't produce anything else. It was the email. So again, this is not a blank check to just ignore KPIs and go the branding way. Oh, this is branding, or oh, maybe there's some blended ROAS to. No, you still have to be extra smart about what you're doing. But the blended ROAS is the North Star. This is the way that I like to think about it. I say all brands should start out with the channel data, focusing on that. Then you should go into the channel data and open up with blended ROAS. And the reason why I say to start with channel data is because when you start as a brand, you want to start investing in anything that's provable, demonstrable, a good investment. It's way too early. Like we said in the beginning of this presentation, if you only go in and you invest in, as you scale, blended ROAS becomes more important. The opposite is also the truth. When you start out, yes, you should use blended ROAS, but channel data and last click as a focus initially can work perfectly fine. Not as a train, so this might be very beautiful, but if you hear too much of the train, please let me know in the comments and I'll fix it for next time. But going back to this, so starting off with channel data is where you start. Then you add a blended ROAS to that mix. And then you can start using an attribution software. Normally, I see attribution software coming in way before you're using blended ROAS. Anybody knows the guy? Rand Fishkin, founder of Moz, SEO Moz, for anybody who's as old as I am in this industry. So he came out with a tweet not long ago, which I really, really liked. And it spoke about who is to blame for over-reliance on attributable marketing, or versus hard to prove but high impact ones. And he says it's not marketers, it's not you, it's not me, it's all the CEOs and boards, etc., that have been that use these data points to prove whether or not marketing is a good investment or not. And I like to argue the exact opposite. And oh my God, I haven't been on this slide at all, but maybe you like not having me, but I'll add me to it as well, especially for this one. It might increase me a little bit. So when we look at him and we look at what he's saying there, he says that it's not a marketing problem, or it's not a marketer's problem, or they're not to blame for CEOs to demand, I want to see what's the ROAS on this thing that I'm running. And I actually think I think it's an awesome issue he's bringing up, and I think that he is 100% correct in bringing it up. But I also think that at the same time, he is dead wrong. I think it's your fault. I think it's my fault. We said 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, you should stop spending on radio, on newspapers, on outdoor, on X, Y, and Z, because look at me and my fancy 10x, 15x, 5x, demonstrable ROI or ROAS in this marketing channel. That's what we did. We trained all the executives to actually depend on demonstrable or provable or channel data, as I like to call it. So it's our fault. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. I'm just going to make myself small again. That doesn't mean that channel data never works. I do think it's an issue as you get bigger and bigger. And I also think that it's an issue if you report on last click data to a board or CEOs. I've been a part of boards or been on the marketing side where boards are asking, what's the ROAS on Google Ads? I'm like, what? Really? I had someone like a month ago ask me, what is the, there was an in-house team we're coaching, and it's like, yeah, the new investors, we came in and said, hey, we have some ideas for how to actually structure the Google Ads account. I was like, what? Get the heck out of here. Like, it wasn't a team on the investor. It was the investor that came and said, yeah, an idea. I was like, go, please focus on something else. But this is where I think that we should really help ourselves, and you should help yourself depending on what data you're actually using to show to different stakeholders. So I've split it up to 3 different levels. So with the C level, which is CEOs, CFOs, COOs, whatever C level you want. Then I've put the marketing leader, the CMO, in its own group. And it's really like, it can be the head of marketing, senior director, whatever, whoever leads marketing. And then I have channel specialists. Channel specialists are people like me, focused on Google Ads or focused on paid search, focused on performance marketing, et cetera, that are really focused on one or multiple channels. The ones actually doing the work, managing the campaign, sending them up, reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I define as channel specialists. For the C level, for the CEO, he should never, ever see the Google Ads ROAS. He should see what's the blended ROAS, what's the profit and loss according to the budget. That's what he needs to see, or she needs to see. They don't need anything else. If they see these numbers and they're green, you should get a thumbs up and say, that's awesome. The CMO, on the other hand, needs to see all the data. He or she needs to look at the blended ROAS, needs to look at the profit and loss, needs to look at qualitative channel insights, meaning those are the things that I came with before, where I said that there was a 90% impression share on Google Ads. That's where I said that there was a 40% of all email signups came from Facebook. Those qualitative insights to the channel, that's what he needs to know. And then he needs to look, or they needs to look at channel ROAS and revenue. Where when you don't look at the channel specialist, where we kind of flip it there. We don't want them looking at profit and loss. Doesn't really matter. Channel ROAS becomes their most important thing to look at. Then qualitative channel insights, and then blended ROAS. And the reason why blended ROAS is at the bottom, some could say that blended ROAS should be on the top, because if the overall blended ROAS doesn't work, why? Like, then they're in this business, all of us together and everything. Yeah, but you'll have 10 or 5 or 3 people just getting stuck if the blended ROAS isn't good. That's where the CMO comes in. They own that number, and then they'll rearrange or realign the different budgets and targets that channel specialists work based on. Or yeah, the targets that they have. That's not up to the individual channel specialist. The individual channel specialist should work on their channel using the channel ROAS and revenue that they have to work for. If they see, hey, overall, and this is where the blended ROAS comes in. If they can see, hey, we have a 5 percentage points overall, hitting 5 percentage points lower than our blended ROAS target, and they can see, hey, I can actually push this channel harder, It will hurt my own ROAS a little bit, but we can get more revenue in and we'll hit our overall targets. That's where you then go to your supervisor, your leader, your boss, the CMO, and say, hey, I have this opportunity. I can see there's this option in the blended ROAS level. That's where that comes into place. That's where we work based on this. But they shouldn't get tied down and looking at the blended ROAS too much. One question I get a lot is, well, how often should blended ROAS targets change? And like, if our blended ROAS target change, how often should my ROAS targets then change? That really, for me, depends on the organization. I have really cool organizations that do this in just around, like, they'll change it on a daily level, where others change it once a month or once a year. So it really depends on how agile your organization is. I would say that you should probably not change targets for each channel more than once a week at best. And I would prefer if you maximum change it once a month. Again, there are times where you don't and where you change more often. That's fine. I like the norm to be around once a month. You align and you say, okay, we can afford to spend a little bit more this channel, a little bit less in this channel, etc., etc. So how to implement the blended ROAS? First off, you need to discuss it internally. This has to be aligned from all the way up and all the way down to the channel specialist. Everybody has to be bought in. Everybody has to be bought into the system. Everybody has to be bought into the mindset. Everybody has to be bought into this new way of doing it, because otherwise you're just going to have somebody say, I'm not going to increase my spend because otherwise I'm not hitting my ROAS. Or if you as a CMO trying to implement it and then the CEO is not into it, one day the CFO will go, hey, we're spending, why do we have a 2x ROAS on Google Ads and we're not hitting, and why are we even spending money there? And you'll just be like, everybody has to be involved in this. So this is one of the few things where I believe you need to get buy-in before you actually do it. Then you set up a first version dashboard. Doesn't matter. You can use Google Data Studio or Looker. It's worst name I've ever heard. Google Sheets, Supermetrics, Databox, any dashboard really. Just make it really, really simple. Pull in your total revenue from the backend or from Google Analytics if it's accurate. Pull in your marketing spend. Update it once a week. You can have an assistant do that. You can VA do that. You can do that yourself. It's numbers you as a CMO should know anyways. Channel people can then update their own data as well. So if you just put in the total revenue, then Supermetrics should really be the one that's pushing the marketing spend. But really, to begin with, if you don't have the skills in that, you can also just do it manually. It's tops 15-30 minutes once a week, and you have that data, and it's really, really useful. First, then, can you then say, okay, how do we automate this, or how do we apply more software into this? Yeah, I wouldn't do it until I had full alignment and I'd been working with it for around 3 to 6 months. Until then, I wouldn't start looking at software. Again, you can automate some of the data inputs. It's not a big issue, but other than that, careful with overcomplicating it initially. The last thing I want to talk about is channel data wrong. I like having this as a slide when I implement or introduce new things. No. We have huge counts running on channel data, especially when there's a direct link between the click and the transaction. But a lot of the cases where we see where channel data isn't the best KPI, or we're scaling, or we're doing other things, where we're just like, the channel data isn't what we should be working based off. Then we've scaled accounts dramatically or drastically beyond the immediate limitations that we had. So highly recommend trying it out, highly recommend implementing it, highly recommend talking to your boss about it, because this is one of these things that really, really can help scale an organization, especially in these days. So that was it for me. Again, if you have any questions, if you have anything you would like to talk about, if you have anything at all, just post them in the comments. We'll do a follow-up live Q&A where we walk through all the questions. I will even do a couple extra slides if there are big questions where we just go through and talk about them in detail. So loved having you here, and thank you, and see you.